Sauron had never reached this stage of nihilistic madness as Morgoth had. He did not object to the existence of the world, so long as he could do what he liked with it. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are looking at something that has actually popped up in my mind quite a few times when exploring the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, and kind of the differences between some of the characters, and that's really how were Morgoth and Sauron actually different? As characters, what they valued, their ideologies, their philosophies. Obviously, we know that Sauron followed in Morgoth's footsteps, trying to do what Morgoth failed to do, and really just supported him in most all things. But how were they different? My friends, thank you all for joining me today. Quick shout out to our second channel, Masters of Mythology, where I'm going through a bunch of different types of mythology, from Egyptian to Greek to Norse, a little bit of Aztec, and I've got some others planned coming up soon as well. So please check that out. Link is in the description below. My friends, let's get into it. So looking at the baseline first, obviously Morgoth is a Vala and Sauron is a Maya. Both of them are Ainur. They were both there at the beginning of the world in Ea during the Ainulin delay and helped sing the world into being. Obviously, we've got that, right? Morgoth's far more powerful. He's considered a godly status. Morgoth is the most powerful beyond Eru Iluvatar himself. And Sauron is many leagues beneath that. But if we're looking at them as characters and how they move through the stories, let's look first at how did they kind of approach the world as they first got there? Morgoth, during the years of the lamps, or even before, right, during the initial just formation of the world, Morgoth really just wanted to become the king of the world. He wanted to claim that world as his own. We even know that before the creation of the world, he went into the unknown places to try to find the flame imperishable. He wanted to be like Eru. He wanted to create life, and he wanted to be the Lord, but really, Lord's too nice of a term. He wanted to be the tyrant of the universe. He believed that his will was the supreme will, and mistook himself as God, right? It really comes down to that sort of arrogance and that sort of ignorance as well of Eru's other plan, right? He couldn't understand the concepts that Manwë could understand, just as Manwë could not understand the concepts of Morgoth. Versus Sauron, he came to the world as a good being. He came to the world as one who served the Valar, right? He was one of Aule's Maiar, and he was a great craftsman, picked up many skills. And we're going to come back to even Saruman in a couple ways. While this video is more about Morgoth and Sauron, I do want to throw in a couple Saruman moments as well. Saruman was also just like Sauron in this way. He was good, he was a servant of Aule, but Sauron fell much faster, obviously, than Saruman did. He was tempted to Morgoth's side. So Morgoth first came to the world with this idea that he should be God, he should be the king, and all things should be subject to him. Now, I think a bit of Morgoth's arc is that he goes away from wanting total dominance and control to having this, as Tolkien sort of indicates, this nihilistic madness, right? That again, Tolkien talks about in that first quote from the beginning of the video, but also just in Morgoth's Ring and in other parts of the works at large. Morgoth changes because after some of his initial defeats, after the jealousy that he feels at the children of Iluvatar and at the other Valar, he begins to get more nihilistic, more destruction hungry, to where by the time of the main events of the Silmarillion during the First Age, we see this version of Morgoth that, yes, wants to dominate what he can, but he wants thralls, he wants slaves, all of that. But that's not really solely what he wants. I think he wants to deface the children of Eru. He wants to destroy elves and subjugate men. He wants to destroy everything that the Valar hold dear, which is their light, their trees, their lamps, and wants to show that he is the supreme ruler of the world, because all things that are sent to defeat him fall before him, right? That's kind of, again, the building on that arrogance, the building on that nihilism. So Morgoth, we have this would-be tyrant and everything like that transitions more to a tyrant who's also destructive, right? He becomes more destructive, he becomes more chaotic as his story goes on. Sauron, he kind of always maintains that desire for order, desire for to rule, right? So after Sauron's fall, and he joins Morgoth after Morgoth's defeat at the end of the First Age, and Sauron becomes the sole Dark Lord, we see that, again, Sauron wants to have tyranny. He doesn't necessarily want to create life or anything like that, but he wants to order the world as it is, away from the Valar. He knows that the Valar could beat him. Obviously, they beat Morgoth. But if he's in the mortal lands of Middle-earth and he's influencing them, he's lying to them, he's a lot more deceptive, a lot more subtle with his techniques, right? So how he brings the Elves almost to ruin through the Rings of Power, and how he brings about the downfall of Numenor. Now, let's look at this in a different way. Let's look at this through the places that they ruled. Obviously, Angband, Thangorodrim, fire, devastation, ruin, the Enfauglith, up in flames. Mordor, right? Not a lot different. We have ash and ruin and some fire from Mount Doom and so forth as well. But how do they treat their vassals, their colonies, as it were? Morgoth, I mean, he just leaves places in ruin. Look at Gondolin, for instance. Sauron, though, is interesting with how he does this because he almost creates vassal states that he uses at a later date. So look at the east, look at Rhûn, look at the south with the Haradrim and the Corsairs of Umbar. He kind of lets them have their own rulers, but they have to submit to him. They have to kind of worship him as their leader and their ruler, and submit forces that he can use against the West and so forth. But he doesn't just crush them. He doesn't just wipe them off the map or light their whole civilization on fire. Just as he promised with the West that their lands, if they surrendered right before the Battle of the Black Gate, if they surrendered, their lands west of the Anduin would be subject to Sauron's will. They could never again take up arms against him, and their regent ruler would be in Orthanc, right, to kind of keep an eye on things, which would have probably been the mouth of Sauron. So we have this idea that, yeah, Sauron doesn't embrace this full nihilism. I think he similarly to Morgoth, he wants more of the elves dead or gone, but as for humans, like, he's definitely wanting to just rule over them. Now, again, that's still evil, right? But we do acknowledge, Elrond acknowledges that Sauron was good in the beginning. He never says that of Morgoth, right? Sauron was good in the beginning. And so maybe Sauron does have a little bit more goodness in his heart than even Morgoth did. I think there's enough support for that claim in the lore. But it is interesting, right? Morgoth leans more into destruction and a little bit more chaos. He wants to rule, he wants to create, but after a while, he'll just take destruction. Sauron, he definitely tries different methods, subtlety and diversion and treachery and all of these things, the Rings of Power, lying to the men of Numenor. He tries all of that and then tries to get force through conquest as well. So, going back even to Saruman, I would say in personality, and again, this is what the extended version of that quote from the beginning of the video even says, is like Sauron better understands Saruman than he does someone like Gandalf, right? Even then, there's this dichotomy between the thoughts of good and the thoughts of evil. They struggle to comprehend each other in Tolkien's works, but Sauron, I would say, is in many ways more similar to Saruman than he is to Morgoth. Right, in terms of those goals. He knows that Saruman also wants to be a tyrant, that he wants to take over, and will use whatever power is allotted to him to do that, but there can't be two kings of the world. There can't be two lords of the rings, right? So they kind of go at odds against each other. Morgoth, again, he was okay with wiping out whatever he needed to. He really did embrace that destructive thought. So, now about their downfall. Morgoth, he overextends himself, and he overextends his arrogance. He doesn't believe that the Valar will take any part, right? Sauron, similarly, is arrogant, right? He believes that, okay, if somebody's going to take my ring, they'll rise up against me, and then I'll be able to take my ring back and they're done. But he doesn't realize innocence and subtlety used against him, right? This subtle, silent hope of the hobbits could be used to his downfall. So with Morgoth, he was such a destructive force that the Valar ultimately sent a destructive force to overpower him, wipe him out, wipe out Angband, wipe out Beleriand. But as for Sauron, he was a more orderly, lawful evil kind of force that needed something more like, again, Frodo, Sam sneaking through, doing something that he would never expect to bring about his downfall. So Morgoth is to a kind of chaotic tyranny as Sauron is to a lawful tyranny. To finish up our conversation here, truly in terms of morality, Morgoth was just the original sin, the original fall of one who believed he should be God instead. He is reminiscent of the largest and most encompassing evils of any sort of story or mythology or religion. But in the role of the story itself, Sauron is something a little closer to the ground. He loves the idea of order, and perfecting that order under his rule, under his reign. And his desire for order definitely leads to a lot of chaos as well, but it's all to get to that dictatorship in the end. And again, I think it's important to draw that line of distinction between Morgoth and Sauron because even visually, even within their roles in their respective stories, they definitely play similar types of characters. And even Peter Jackson based Sauron's look off of Morgoth's descriptions because I think there were more descriptors, at least physically, of Morgoth than there were of Sauron. And since Sauron followed in his footsteps, it just made sense. So there we have it. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Are there any major ideas that I may have missed here? Let me know. But I think this encompasses really how they are different in many ways. They definitely present a very similar sort of evil overall in the narratives, but I think it's worth pointing out these subtle differences, so the next time we go through these stories, we can kind of be like, oh yeah, they are different in these ways. So please hit that like button if you enjoyed this, share this with a friend, and if you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some White Air United Cutlery, Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout. Please check out our merch, and our Patreon, and our memberships for access to our Discord and our monthly podcast. And thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members themselves: Todes Morgen, Joby Weasel, Ed Patterson, ComicNut64, Zoomi, Peter Sheppard. Thank you all so much for continuing to keep the channel going. My friends, we'll see you soon on Masters of Mythology with another video. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until our next one.